What up, Mike? Toronto. VK on the beat. Check. I'm in Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm from Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm in Toronto like we wanna get the city love. My city love me back for my city love.
Welcome to episode 1660. That's 1660 of Toronto Mic'd. Proudly brought to you by Great Lakes Brewery, a fiercely independent craft brewery who believes in supporting communities, good times, and brewing amazing beer. Order online for free local home delivery in the GTA. Palma Pasta. Enjoy the taste of fresh, homemade Italian pasta and entrees from Palma Pasta in Mississauga and Oakville. RecycleMyElectronics.ca. Committing to our planet's future means properly recycling our electronics of the past. Building Toronto Skyline, a podcast and book from Nick Ioannis, sponsored by Fusion Corp Construction Management, Inc. And Ridley Funeral Home, pillars of the community since 1921. Joining me today, returning to Toronto Mike to make a major announcement, it's Mike Richards. Welcome back, Mike.
Yes, that's right. Major announcement, part 17.
I'm going to ask you some hard-hitting questions. Firstly,
Yes.
it's good to see you.
It's always great to see you. Yeah, it is very good, obviously.
I couldn't sleep last night. I'll be very honest with you. I said a major announcement from Mike Richards live on Toronto Mic'd. And of course, we're on the live stream, live.torontomike.com. And there's a great crowd there. I've got to shout them out off the top here. I have questions for you. Let's see here. Elvis says he's so hot right now. Like, Elvis couldn't sleep either last night. He wasn't sleeping with me, but he's very excited that he's for this announcement. Shout out to YYZ Gord. Shout out to Hey Ref. I got to shout out VP of Sales, Ian Service. I know Dale Cadeau is on here. He hasn't. Rob Del Mundo is on here. Jeremy Hopkin. Gosh, I'm running out of breath here. Tobias Vaughn. Did I say VP of Sales? Of course I did. Andrew Ward is here. Andy is here. Needless to say, Mike Richards, there's a huge crowd that has gathered to greet you this Monday morning, and I am the happiest of all of us. So thank you for making the long drive to do this in person.
Well, hopefully I can have some final and some finality to the tap dance that is required in sports media these days, which has not been fun.
Well, let's set the table because there might be somebody tuning in to their first Mike Richards on Toronto Mic'd experience. And I'm going to be very honest. I like you. I root for you. I have private chats with our mutual friend Jeff Lumby about you and your career. Like, this is how much we all care about you. And it seems like it used to be a annual occurrence that once a year probably Mike Richards is going to come by and make a major announcement. And then it's sort of like the best comparison I can make is that Lucy's holding the football for you.
Yes.
You're Charlie Brown. You're excited to finally you're going to kick that football, and then Lucy pulls it away. Lucy being, mainstream media, cable companies, whatever. So I'm going to ask you very specific questions. You were last here. It wasn't an annual event. It's not an annual event anymore.
I was just here.
December 2024.
I think it was last week. I know how it feels. Trust me, folks. I feel the pain.
I got to beat you up a little, and then I got a drum roll and everything. I'm very excited about this. But December 2024, it was episode 1595, and I wrote the description. Mike Richards drops by to make a big announcement. Okay, so before we get to this new announcement, can you please share with us what went wrong? Like, I mean, you told us about how you were going to have a third party in Toronto record a video presentation, and it was going to air in Calgary on a city station. We had great details, and we had a start date. Why did this never happen, Mike?
So the one thing that is the hardest thing to get your head around, although anyone who's in media will understand, but it's worse now, which is this country in all media runs out of Toronto. So what Toronto wants, Toronto will get. They are God and King. So if you're in one of those other cities, which of course I spent 6.5 years in Calgary,
right,
sort of learning a little bit the hard way on just how those cities are perceived and their wants. I got it again in a way that I don't think anyone even in Calgary. They've been just absolutely the best people I've probably ever worked with when you talk about the Rogers people in Calgary. And so they were told that the time slots that were available were not available. So I was 1 week away. I was 7 days away from debuting. And so there I was. I had started cutting, people know me for the comedic bits and the impressions and so on. I have to, at least in my mind, always evolve to not just use radio bits and slap them on TV. I have to have a way of still getting what I think is funny, a sense of humor that is TV friendly, that is made only for television, quite frankly. So I started shooting some of those,
right,
and had a great time doing it. As the phone call came in and said, "We don't have any time slots." What are you talking about?
But did they sell you? They sold you this time, no?
The time for the company itself. So we're talking about Rogers, and they are the ones.
Right.
They have other issues at the head office, and in this case, it was them being their hands were filled full of old OLN
Outdoor Life Network,
right? That's now defunct,
right?
But they had to find, I guess, places to play them. Well, mine was one of the time slots. So City and Rogers,
right,
they went to bat for me. It's not often I've ever had people within their own company go to bat for me. Normally it's the other way around. I go to start my car and it blows up like I'm an English soldier in Belfast. That's what it's like being me. Oh yeah. I'm crossing the street, and instead of being caught for jaywalking, they pull out Uzis. This is my life. It's the eternal joy buzzer of trying to be in this weird, turbulent sports media world, of which, I'll be honest, folks, there's not a lot of it. And so when people say, well, how big is this? I know there's one guy who had said, oh, what a big announcement for Mike Richards. He's going to be on an hour on City TV in Calgary. Yeah, real huge announcement. Except, pal, what you're not taking into in your world, and I assume you're not in the business or you would never have said that, there are no new sports shows. People aren't sitting there in different offices, and certainly in Toronto, going, what is a new way to approach doing a sports program that is hosted by a guy who's going to say whatever he wants? Well, first of all, they don't. They're afraid.
Well, you're a risk because you shoot from the hip, and we aren't. Rogers isn't sure what Mike Richards is going to say next.
Well, really, there are companies that they have no interest in doing anything new because it's going to cost $1.
Right.
So that's what you're up against. In some ways, being with Rogers at this period of time, and I will give another shout out to Kerry Elliott, who's the top guy at City TV Rogers, who I called the unicorn. Now his girlfriend is calling him the unicorn.
Whoa.
The reason I call him that is simply his enthusiasm and his want to change the way that the current climate in sports media is. He is fearless, to the point where I'm sure he's a huge pain in the ass for everybody at Rogers, because he's like me. He just doesn't give up. And so finally, they turned around to me and said, okay.
But you're not going to make the announcement until I do the drum roll, right?
Yeah. So They gave me alternatives, is what I'm going to say. They gave me alternatives to say, if it's currently not available right now for the time slot that you want, let's come up with something different.
Okay, because my question is, again, I'm not in the industry either, but I talk to people who are in the industry like you, and I don't understand why Rogers would not take your money to run your show.
Then that's everybody. That is not just you thinking that. That's me thinking that. That is probably those in Calgary thinking that, and also places like Winnipeg.
Were you paying them in Monopoly, Canadian Tire money, maybe?
It's not. It's okay. Let me give you an even more crazy scenario.
Okay.
So at some point I said, well, the support I'm going to have in Alberta itself, especially Calgary, is going to dwarf anything. No, by the numbers. My numbers by far are way bigger in Southern Ontario than they are in the rest of the world combined. It's just not, it's not close. So some people say, well, you're always popular in Calgary. You're a Calgary guy. Well, right. I do feel like a Calgary guy. I feel like that is basically my hometown. It just is. Huh. But by the numbers, it really isn't. But what it offers and what it has is really what is at an Albertan's heart at the matter, which let's give it a shot. This is how, if you're in Alberta and you have an idea, someone's going to say, well, what is it? In Toronto, I walk through the door and go, get out. Get out. We don't want to hear anything new. Nothing new. Yeah, but what about, no whatabouts.
Right.
It's Toronto. We're not doing this. They're afraid, Mike. The industry is panicky. They really are unsure of what it is that they think they may want to do. So what do? Nothing. Nothing gets done.
Right. It's easy to do nothing.
It's easy. And then, so people say, well, why would you watch programming that comes up from the States? Like, can I ask, here's a question.
Yeah.
If we're elbows up, if we're so angry about the attempt of the Pumpkinhead south of the border trying to make us the 51st state, throwing tariffs on us, so our reaction was, well, we're going to fight back. We're going to be Canada first. It's all about, we're going to produce things in Canada for Canadians by Canadians. Except for media. Sorry, what's the last part? I missed the last part. Are they talking about me?
Right.
Why am I watching TSN? Why am I watching all Rogers programming, a lot of it, where it's like, oh, the craziest Major League Baseball blunders of the month? Nobody wants to see that. Nobody cares. We have phones. We get it. You want to see someone get a tennis ball in the nuts? We can find it. Bob Saget did it years ago. We don't need to see any more of this shit. However, I will see, and as much as some of the shows are great, I like Pat McAfee. Mm-hmm. I probably watch more American sports than some Americans. So I get what he's talking about. I love the concept of him and kind of his bros. Look, it's not for everybody. I get it. And he doesn't talk hockey. But why am I not doing that? Why
not make it in Canada for Canadians by Canadians?
Where's the elbow up part?
Right.
Because I'm not seeing it. And I'm certainly not feeling it when I have the great people in Calgary ready to give me a time slot and I lose out to what? Something that's not going to make them money or get them any ratings. Well, that's what I'm up against.
Here's my confusion, because I know you have a major announcement and we're going to get to it. But my confusion is, I thought, and tell me if I'm wrong, I thought you were going to hand a piece of video to Rogers in Calgary along with a check.
Correct.
And Rogers in Calgary is going to cash that check because you bought this hour. I'm going to make it up, an hour. How long was the show?
An hour.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've bought this hour block, Frank D'Angelo style. And
well, I don't know if we want that comparison.
So they're do you sing?
I don't make movies. I don't make movies on the weekend with people who are 2 weeks away from dying.
Well, those aren't checks either. That's cash, man. You can't trace that stuff. But okay, so you send the money to Rogers, and Rogers drops in this hour you bought. They air your video because it doesn't have nudity and graphic sex and swear words in it, so they just air this thing. And that's my guessing. Maybe you do, but okay. So I don't understand why they wouldn't take your money. Like, why would they say we're not taking your money because we're going to air this Outdoor Life Network? Because I feel like testing this. I'll send them a Toronto Mic'd episode with some money and see if they air that.
No, you're not getting on. You're not getting on. Nobody's getting on because
sounds like a challenge.
We need to see a show from 1987, two guys named Dan who are catching frogs up in Timmins in a campground. Okay, but that's what they're airing.
But this was in the calendar, because I was at the time, I was still on the app formerly known as Twitter, and I was watching your posts where you were like, okay, they moved up the date. It was tied to maybe the Super Bowl or something.
Correct.
But you said on this day, Raw Mike Richards, what was the name of that show going to be?
Raw Mike Richards.
Raw Mike Richards is going to air on this date on this station. Like, this was all lined up. I don't understand how they pull the rug from under you when this was a done deal and this was you paying them to air that show.
Correct.
Like, how do you get so royally fucked, Mike Richards?
Yeah. Well, see,
again,
this is welcome to my life, or anybody who's attempting this. Now, I'm being kind when I say anybody because I don't know anyone else who's doing this. In an industry, in a business, where they are lopping off heads and arms and legs and throwing them off the castle into the river as they float down, these body parts are floating down the river. And who's coming the other way, like on a paddleboard? Hey, I know that guy. Coming upstream the other way. That's what I do. And that's what I am. I wish it wasn't like this. I wish it was the way it was back in the day where people recognize, gave you some sort of a sense of respect and dignity, where they realize there's probably some revenue and ratings with the guy who's coming through their door. Therefore, they would give you a paycheck. I would go in, negotiate a salary,
Right.
and then we get at it. And for me, I work very, very hard at what I do. These things that are created are well, I don't know anyone else who does that.
And next thing you know it, I'm taking a leak at the Leaf game, and I got to stare at like a 6-foot composite photo of Mike Richards on the door,
Yes.
or in the toilet room, like in the bathroom. It's like that's what I need to stare at when I'm trying to take a leak. There's Mike Richards.
I think even guys taking a dump now. You have to realize.
I've never taken a dump at the Scotiabank Arena. What's it like?
I mean, who really would? I'm not. So
Tell me about that experience.
The idea that was Rob Gray's idea, by the way, who was out in Vancouver, and
Well,
at
it's good.
first
You
I
get the
thought
sports fans.
it was fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, it was really kind of brilliant because then what you do is you have to engage with like 250,000 pictures of guys pulling their pants down and doing obscene things to my face. It was hilarious.
So just a typical Saturday night for you.
It was It was like being at a Legion in Uxbridge on a Friday night when they run out of rye. That's what it's like. So it was a brilliant thing, and up to that point, really, sort of, if I'm drawing a line in the sand, exactly at the time that I get diagnosed with cancer,
right?
Everything was, in fact, the next day that they had put my face on the boards at the then ACC, so Scotiabank.
Right.
It was for that campaign. And so there's my face on the side of the boards. It's in the arena. It's in all the bathrooms.
Mm-hmm.
They give me a cake with that picture of my face on it. I don't know. How do you, that's a business? Faces on cakes? Anyway, so they do this, and I'm like, this couldn't be better. And within 12 hours, I'm going to be diagnosed with rectal cancer.
Wow.
And from that moment on, and that would have been in 2014, because 2015, yeah. So basically 10 years ago, this is what happens for me. And since that time, it has been the paddleboard up the river, trying to navigate between the heads, arms, and legs that they're chopping off by the second, coming the other way. So it's been uphill. It's been upstream.
It was the best of times. It was the blurst of times.
Yeah.
Fair to say that.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, so obviously you couldn't get back into mainstream media because they're not hiring anybody, let alone people of your profile. They're not going to hire Mike Richards. So it sounds like your only way back in the game, from my perspective, a guy who built this thing, this brand, this guy was on CNN. Okay, Mike Richards. Okay, this is all built in my basement by myself, right? So with some good FOTMs helping me along the way, of course. But as I would say to your friend Jeff Lumby, I would say you don't need mainstream media to broadcast. I said this to Humble and Fred back in 2006. In 2006, I sat with Humble and Fred and said, you don't need mainstream media to broadcast. And they're doing it today. So I guess before we get to your major announcement, what is it with you and you seem to need a mainstream media partner in an age when mainstream media wants nothing to do with the Mike Richards of the world? Why do you think you need that?
It's a good question, except...
I'm your shrink now.
Except they would be more than willing to give money for somebody who's going to give them results. We are sitting now with quote-unquote talent that sit in these chairs that people don't listen to. So someone said, no one listens to sports radio anymore. I'm like, well, why would you? Why would you watch what the companies have presented as entertainment/talent? Why would I pay for that? Why would Labatt or Molson or Subaru or Ford or Rolex or I'll go down, banks, insurance companies? Why would you sink your money into something that is falling faster than a rock in a water? Well, people say it's because the medium is failing. No, to a degree, yes, but why is it failing? It's because probably a decade ago they gave up. Those that were in control of the car, those who had the keys to the car that is sports media, all of a sudden they weren't those that were aggressive, those that were creative, those that wanted to do things, those who were looking for a way to entertain people and keep their margins. So when you gave that up, we started hiring people that have no experience. The example would be this. Years ago, when the Zamboni guy had to play goal in an NHL hockey game.
David Ayres.
So there he is. One day he's a Zamboni guy. The next day, he's in an NHL hockey game. Well, it was an interesting story. Everyone loved it.
Yep.
It was like the story of the hour. You know, he became a 15-minute celebrity, and then everyone moved on to, well, I would assume, a professional goaltender. If it were media and it were sports media, they go, whoa, 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 whoa. You mean we can get a Zamboni guy? Yeah, but he has no experience. He's not a professional in this business. Yeah, but if we can get a whole league of Zamboni guys,
that's Dirt Guy.
we don't have to pay them.
Okay. Yeah.
We don't have to pay them.
Okay.
We'll just go around and get Zamboni guys. And don't worry, no one will notice the difference. We'll get a Zamboni guy. Right. We'll get a concession guy. We'll get the clean the toilet guy. We'll get all these people, and we won't have to pay any money. But see, that wouldn't work because people would go, these guys are shit. These guys aren't professionals. Why would I go to a hockey game? And that's what happened to sports media.
Okay, so now I'm ready for the big announcement. So the last question I have, because we'll do a drum roll and then we'll get the big announcement from you. And this is imminent. I know people are like, on The Simpsons, they have that, get to the fireworks factory. Okay, so we're going to go to the fireworks. I know I dragged it on a good half an hour here. But I wanted to set the table because you keep making these announcements. And more often than not, these things don't actually come to fruition, or they're like a bad copy of what you were promised. And then this latest one never happened at all. But you have a new announcement to make. Are you ever worried you're going to lose some integrity with your announcements, that you make multiple announcements and they don't happen? Like, you're going to make an announcement now, and I'm going to be wondering, like, okay, I'll believe it when I hear it. Like, this is how I'm going to feel. And I hope it happens. But are you ready? I'm going to play the drum roll. Are you ready to make the announcement?
Sure I am.
Gosh, I honestly, I'm so excited. Okay, so here we go. Mike Richards, big announcement.
Here it is, starting April the 13th. So that's Masters Sunday. I am starting back on the Fan 960 on Sunday. I am taking an hour. It is sponsored. And here you ask the question, well, why the difference between, doing a show, a podcast from where you don't. The sponsor is CIBC, Wood Gundy. They're just the first through the door. There's a lot of other, but the show is brought to you by CIBC Wood Gundy. It is an hour of what I do best, and I figured if I need the support, the people in Calgary and those at Rogers, I realize every broadcaster, you have a lot of them that are in here. Everyone's got a certain story and a feeling about the companies they have worked for and the current companies. I will say this about Rogers. There is still a semblance of, well, do you think this could work? Can we go back? Can in some ways, can we go back to go forward? The answer is yes, and I will prove it. I will prove it each and every week with an hour, with probably a lot of sponsors that a lot of other guys would not get. This is not bragging, by the way, folks. Either you can
brag, man. Everyone else is bragging.
Either you can or you can't, Mike. I come from a background of sport which says I'm fast. I'm fast too. Well, race. How fast do you run? What do you run the 100 in? Is it sub 9.7? No. Well, then you're not fast. You have to be able to put up those numbers or you're a piece of shit. You're a liar. The thing that I've always been able to rely on is going back to even the numerous numbers at the time and saying, well, just go to the scoreboard. Go to the numbers. If we'd just gone by numbers, most of us, including myself, the Bob McCowns of the world, we wouldn't have lost our jobs. But we were deemed to be expensive. And by the new guard that has come in and taken over sports media, they don't know what would they know? At Rogers, I'm not getting that anymore. I'm getting the, okay, got screwed on this one, you got screwed on that one. What about this? And so when Rogers came to me and said, what about with all the other stuff that potentially that could go on, and that other stuff is still sitting there because the two Dans catching trout in the Ganaraska at some point is going to run out where it gets no ratings and no money.
Right.
I'll be there. And so I will get the chance to prove myself starting April the 13th, Fan 960. And I'm so excited with the team that I have built because they're like 4 or 5 people that have joined this team that I put together, including a great surprise on who my imaging producer is.
Okay. So I'm going to play a promo that you just flipped to me when you arrived here at the TMDS studio. And I've never heard this, obviously. I just got the announcement. So I'm going to play this promo, but just so I recap and I understand everything, 1 hour a week, yes. Raw Mike Richards will be on the Fan 960. Which,
from 10 a.m. Mountain Time, so that's noon Eastern, from 10 a.m. to 11, and streamed live on the Rogers digital platform, coast to coast.
I'm going to play the promo. Is this... So you were trying... The last announcement was you were going to have the TV show on City TV in Calgary, which is also Rogers owned. And then that you just explained why that never came to fruition, but you were going to cut a check to buy that time. Is this Fan 960 show you cutting a check for that hour?
Yeah, it's similar.
I just want to be transparent.
Yes.
Okay, so now you're doing paid programming on the radio, and this is the station just for the Toronto, because a lot of people listening are Toronto-centric and aren't even sure what 960 is. So this is basically the 590 in Toronto, their version of the 590 in Toronto that's out of Calgary, so talking more Flames and Stampeders, right? And this is where you were the morning show for several years.
6.5 years.
And you were very successful.
It was the biggest numbers in Canada for all sports. They were just the biggest.
Wait, so bigger than this guy? Because I've been hearing forever, Primetime Sports was the biggest sports program in Canada. Were you bigger than that?
Well, I'm talking radio.
This is radio. Right?
Bob
McCowan.
Oh, you're talking about by market. My numbers. Well, yes.
I'm just asking the tough questions because I know he's been bragging forever that he was the most listened to sports presentation.
Oh,
on
he
the radio
was
in Canada.
Okay. Let me put it this way.
Yeah,
the numbers they fight for now in sports radio, and I'm going to use the demo that was constantly used, which was Males 2554.
Right.
So Bob McCowan in the afternoon would be a 14 to an 18 share.
And that means 14 to 18% of people in that demo listening to the radio at that time are tuned into 590.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Now, I think if you added every show on both stations combined, it wouldn't equal that number.
And also, it's interesting we talk about share because share is relative to the size of the pie, but it doesn't take a analyst to tell you that the radio listening universe is shrinking.
Yes.
So I got this percent. So it's like, I got 15% of people listening to the radio right now are listening to me, and it's like, yeah, but there's 100 people listening to the radio right now. That's 15 people. Okay, but your show is debuting at noon Eastern time. I'll talk Toronto centric because it is Toronto. Mike Dale Cadeau can do the math and figure it out. But April 16th at noon, you, Raw Mike Richards, are going to have a show airing on the Fans 960. Is that show live?
No, to start, no.
Okay.
That's illegal.
So how
By the way,
old is it?
That's a legal thing. We assumed it would be live, and so did
But when do you record the hour to drop at
Thursday?
Okay. This goes back, and this is again. What day of the week is it again? Saturday, Sunday?
Sunday.
Okay.
So I will deliver.
But you don't have any concerns about the fact that sports talk ages like news. Like it's tough to do a Thursday show that drops on a Sunday. No worries there because of your personality.
Put it this way: it's sort of like. If you're doing sort of a John Oliver roundup of what has happened during the week, or it doesn't allow me at that point to be live. But that's not to say that it won't be at some point, and hopefully sooner than later.
And you got some sponsors on board, including CIBC Wood Gundy, which is a huge brand right there. Okay, let's listen to the promo, and you can tell me who your imaging person is that you're teasing me with here. Let's listen.
Raw Mike Richards.
Oh my God, I'm back. I'm back, baby.
Sunday mornings 10 to 11 a.m. Brought to you by Cassock Wealth Management, CIBC Wood Gundy. Exclusively on Sportsnet 960 The Fan.
Okay, so right off the top, it sounds big, right? That sounds professional. You'll tell us who's doing that in a minute. But I want to say congrats to you because I know you're excited about this back on the radio. Is it right for me to assume you're thinking that the good people at the Fan, Rogers-owned radio station in Calgary, will see a spike that people are tuning in to hear Raw Mike Richards, and then that possibly this can be parlayed into a weekday gig during the prime hours? Or are you happy to just have good partners like CIBC Wood Gundy and roll your own that way? Like, is the long-term plan that they're going to be like, Mike, this is great. People are listening. You should be our afternoon drive show Monday to Friday.
I'm not looking for a specific radio time slot. No.
But are you looking to get hired so it's like the old days when you had just, hey, pay me every 2 weeks or whatever?
Well, there's two things. Yeah. One,
it's a great promo, by the way.
In order to get as big as you want. So let's say it's Pat McAfee. Let's say that's where the goalposts are. So you're live every day. You are taken in certain markets, probably live on the radio as well. Well, it's got to start somewhere. You have to start somewhere, and you have to start with good people. That's what this is. So this isn't, I'm going to do an hour for the rest of my days. That's never been me, and that's not what this is. This is, how do we get things, I wouldn't say back on track, but how do we have availability for those that want to be in sports media? Is there a place for them to go right now? Is it, if no one does a thing, then I can guarantee you that sports media as we know it in terms of sports radio is gone. Because the thought that goes into a lot of it is almost a zero.
But if they don't care, why should we care? Like, they don't care. Bell Rogers, I mean, there are exceptions. I mentioned Humble and Fred earlier, but Fred tells me he likes Overdrive, which is a show on TSN with O-Dog, etc. And so he's enjoying this mainstream media program. You know, he's older than us, but still, that he's tuning in, he's listening live. But primarily, it seems to me from this perspective that the cable companies do not really care about if people are listening beyond the live sports that they air, right? So Rogers does want people tuning into Blue Jays games on Sportsnet, and of course they have a big NHL package, and TSN has a regional package, and they have the CFL games, blah, 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 blah. But if they don't care, why should we care? Like, we'll just go to podcasts to get the real-time conversations from the personalities we want. We'll just go listen to Jeff Merrick on his podcast. You didn't know there'd be hard-hitting questions, Mike Richards.
It is good that there is availability, especially at Jeff Merrick, to have people like that who have shows that are on your schedule. You don't have to be in the car. You have to be
on demand.
You can do it on demand,
right?
Which is great. But the other part that has always made radio is the ability for someone to come on with an opinion, to have a take, not a hot take, not the American fake, I'm upset about, who's getting so little time on the power play. I don't mean that.
Right.
I mean someone who's going to talk about sports in a way that's actually engaging. Someone who's actually spoke to the guys who play the game, the guys who hire the players to play the game, the guys who own the teams. See, now you have a lot of guys, and people say, oh, so you're putting down the current guys. So what you're saying is the guys on the radio aren't very good.
Right.
I think they know a lot about sports. In fact, it's borderline sports nerd heaven. Fantasy football, fantasy hockey, fantasy, whatever. They know every detail about every player. They know how much they weighed at birth. It's not that. I just can't listen to sports nerddom for hours on end with nobody except those connected to the company itself as their quote-unquote insiders. When you have a guest, if you're going to sit there and make fun of an athlete, which sometimes I hear, I'm like, okay, so you're going to have him on? You going to talk to him? No, because you don't talk to anybody. You don't have the kind of engaging conversations, quite frankly, that I learned from a Bob McCown, who would have the biggest names on and occasionally going to ask the hard questions. But the reason Bob was able to do, the reason that you're able to ask me absolutely anything you want is that we have respect for each other. You have respect for me. I come in here, I know it's going to be dignified.
Mad respect for your hustle, man.
And you can ask anything, and I'm going to give you an honest answer. I won't tap dance.
Right.
And there are some things,
and that's why I keep inviting you over every quarter for a major announcement.
It is. For instance, when people believe in you, you get the team that I've got. The voice you just heard, you're like, wow, that sounds...
Yeah, I do, of course.
Why does that sound familiar?
It does sound big leagues, that promo. It sounds big.
His name is Ron Tarrant, and he is the voice of Howard Stern.
Okay, now I got to play it again that I have this knowledge, because I love my Howard Stern. Let me hear this again.
Raw Mike Richards.
Oh my God, I'm back. I'm back, baby.
Sunday mornings 10 to 11 a.m. Brought to you by Cassock Wealth Management, CIBC Wood Gundy. Exclusively on Sportsnet 960 The Fan.
So you hired the guy who does the imaging for the Howard Stern show?
No, I did not hire Ron.
Okay.
Ron said, I heard that you're starting again. He goes, you're on my bucket list. I said, yeah, but you work for Stern. He goes, yeah, so that's off the bucket list, but I don't have the Mike Richards thing. So I'm in.
So he did this pro bono.
He is like everybody else in this project, taking a chance to be a part of something he believes has a much bigger picture, no ceiling to where we want to take this thing.
Okay, now you got me all hot and bothered here. So do you want to shout out, because you keep referencing the team, and I keep having flashbacks to you on 1050 The Team, but of course this is the small T team, okay?
Yes.
And people can go into the Toronto Mike archives. Mike Richards been over many times, but I'm pretty sure it's the first visit of Mike Richards where we go into detail on that wonderful happening there. But can you tell me who's part of this team?
Yeah, so you just heard the image producer. That's Ron Tarrant.
Okay.
Initially started with some friends of mine at a company downtown called, well, now they're called Eggplant Picture and Sound, and a good friend of mine named Paul Moyer. So Paul hooked me up with the guy. This goes back to our Ryerson days. His name's Wayne Craig. Wayne Craig became a really huge director for massive commercials that you would see during Super Bowl. He's been down in the States and continues to fly down there, does movies, whatever. But he's one of the nicest. You know what? There are certain people who are on Team Good Guy, and meeting him is, again, very rare. And people are like, well, who's on Team Good Guy? Well, Toronto Mike is. There's a reason why all of us come in with no hesitation, or go to Palma Pasta, or go to whatever listening party or whatever. Because
Grey Lakes Brewery, June 26th from 6 to 9 p.m. Everybody's invited, no charge to attend. You'll get your first beer on the house, and you'll be fed by Palma Pasta. Be there.
Yeah. And there's a reason we'll all be there.
Will you be there?
I'll have to think about it. So you find people, and it's a rarity. So when you find them in your lives, whether it's just friendship, hang on to it. So Wayne Craig became part of that scenario. Then as we move out west, there's a company called Joe Media. So that's an administrative, it is a production house in Calgary, a really super nice guy named Matt Gillespie. And they're busy people. They not only do a lot of ads, they do movies, they do anything, and you know how much it is shot out in Alberta, a lot.
Sure.
Matt Gillespie with the beginning of this, and he's like, if Richards is coming back, I'm in. Then there's a guy named Chris Duncan. Chris Duncan, who has been in the television business forever, was the boss basically when the A channels came on. Right. So that was both Calgary and Edmonton, and then they became City TVs. The head boss, the top guy, was a guy named Chris Duncan, who is a fabulous professional. So he's part of that team. The one guy that we have now, because Alberta's going through some gaming issues, and by that I mean the online gambling guys, they mess around at that. Again, these are things that I can't control, because once it's available, they'll jump on this very quickly. A guy by the name of Phil Gray became sort of our gaming consultant, who worked for Sports Interaction for all these years and has been in that business for probably 25 years, is sort of waiting on what we're going to do when it's going to happen, and they will go through him. So every element of what it takes to do this, and quite frankly, they were assembled for television. But when the television thing happened, they all said the same thing.
Right.
We're not going anywhere, because this is going to happen for you. So what do we do now? And Roger said, do radio. Come back to the Fan. Give us an hour of what Mike Richards does, and then we'll figure this thing out as we go on. This is coming at a time where I realize, and this goes back to the original thing I said about the guy said, well, why is this big? Well, because this is the only place that's happening. And if I'm going to get some semblance of the industry moving against the stream, going by the arms and legs and the decapitated heads, I have to at least try. It's why we're so angry with Trump and the 51st state cracks. So we could do nothing, and we've become a big state. And then maybe there are some freaks out there who think that's a good idea.
Very, very small number of these freaks.
But just let's just say that all of a sudden we decided, well, that's okay. I mean, there's going to be a benefit here. Really? So at what point did you just capitulate no matter what? Well, I'm not doing that. And I'm certainly not doing it in 30 years of trying to work and working with some great people. And guess what? Almost all of them are all gone. They've either been fired, some have retired, but most lost their jobs. The last guy who I would consider sort of one of my contemporaries. So that means of the time I was on the air, let's say in Toronto, major market, big competition, the last guy who existed in that capacity, Greg Brady,
right,
has now decided he's going to run as a conservative in the Ajax area. So he's going to politics, but he's the last one. Everyone else, not my contemporaries, everyone else is gone for various reasons. And of course, even a John Derringer, gone. Brother Jake, Gallagher. I mean, I go down the list. Obviously, Bob McCowan. There's no more Tim and Sid. It's all gone. So I've got this one opportunity. And not unlike you and a lot of great people that I feel very fortunate to be in this country are like a Gene Velitis, for instance. They're like, you got to go, buddy. You're the last man standing. Like, don't give up. Like, don't. And you see the bullets fly. And I take a lot of shots. I get it. But this is different. In fact, I'm getting on a plane. I'm being flown out Thursday. I will be in Calgary for 10 days to oversee everything. Everything. The first show will be packed full of people who are so beloved in that part of the world. There'll be flames. There'll be general managers. But there's going to be people just in general who are going to kick ass because they're supporting me. Nothing more than just supporting a guy who's fighting back. That's it.
Mike, I think we're all like happy for you, and you seem excited about this. You seem excited about this, but you were also excited in December 2024. So I hope this all unfolds as it should, because you deserve this. But I took a note on a sentence you've said a couple of times now, but you said, this is going to happen to you. So I guess I'm wondering, because, I produce podcasts, and I am of the belief you don't need to buy time on a radio station to broadcast and have, CIBC Wood Gundy get great exposure from the Richards heads out there. Like, this is me talking. Like, we're talking real talk here. So my advice, if you privately chat with me, I'd be like, save your money and podcast. This is what I'm going to say. One of the questions on the live stream is this also going to be a podcast?
Yes.
Okay, so you can listen live on 960 in Calgary,
yes,
which I'm sure we can stream over the internet from Toronto, of course, at noon on April 16th. That's the first
13th.
Oh, April 13th. I took the wrong note here. Okay, April 13th. I got to get my notes right here. But it's also going to be a podcast. And I was on CNN. I know. You know what? If you keep this up, you're going to get the call to be on CNN next. By the way, you said you were doing your example of 51st state, and what if we decided, and I gotta say, I got a knot in my stomach when you were even doing that analogy, because I'm just looking you in the eye. I know that you're friendly with Calgary, and I know what things, my wife is from Alberta. I follow what's going on in Alberta very closely. There is the only chance Canada even considers being any part of America is if Donald J. Trump calls his military, the largest military in the world, as commander-in-chief, and they obey his orders to invade this country with military might. That is the only way Canada even capitulates, as you said. There is 0% chance that Canada would ever agree to be any part of the United States of America without that military invasion. Do you agree with me on that?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I do. I also realize that in Trump, and we all have met guys like this, they're just full of shit. They're full of shit.
He's full of shit, but do you trust him as far as you can throw him?
Yeah, but I don't think.
Do you?
I don't think. Oh no. I think he's one of those guys, and we all have kind of friends like this, where at least 70% of it isn't true at all. You just have to figure out, what does that 30% mean that is honest? Like, what is it? Why this talk? Why the talk about Greenland? Mm-hmm. Why Panama Canal? Why all the Gaza being a holiday destination? I mean, you start listening to somebody, and it all sounds like crazy. But as people who have worked with him are like, yeah, but the smoke and mirrors, the distraction, the noise, as you call it, the firecrackers going. I'm like, what is it that he really wants? What is the point of it?
But what if we agree, even right now, you and me, just regular civilians here, we agree that he wants Canada. Let's say Donald Trump wants Canada.
I don't think he wants Canada.
See, I think he wants Canada.
I think he wants what we have if he can get it from he's just a dollars and cents guy.
I think he wants Greenland. I think he wants Canada. I think we should watch very closely. I think he will use military might to annex Greenland, and I think we're next. I'm telling you.
I don't believe that there's going to be military action. I don't.
I hope you're right. I hope you're right, because I've been reading about the insurgency and when this happened. And I'm now having thoughts, and I was telling my wife about this, and she's like, wondering if I'm crazy or not. But I do not think I'm crazy. I hope the listenership lets me know if I sound like I've gone off the deep end.
Well, you've said a lot of crazy things, and you've said a lot of stuff that doesn't make sense. And I'll be honest, one of the things that you just said, and you say it a lot, it was April 16th when the date's April 13th, so you can't even get the dates right.
I'm now having thoughts. About, okay, I got 4 kids. I got a wife. How do I get them somewhere safe So I can stay behind and join the insurgency.
Yeah, so you're a bomb shelter guy. Is what you're telling me.
I'm not a bomb shelter guy traditionally, typically. I'm not a bomb shelter guy. I now think he wants us, and I think I know he's the commander-in-chief of the world's largest military, which would easily overwhelm our military. I think if he wants this, I don't trust him as far as I can throw him. I think he is enamored with Putin, who had a country next door that he wanted, and he called his military in, and they're at war right now, the Ukraine. I don't see why we should laugh this off. I'm
not saying laugh.
But I actually, and again, I don't have a crystal ball. I hope more than anything that this goes away. Like, go get distracted by something else shiny over there. But I am now thinking, preparing myself for the possibility that America will invade based on the orders from their commander-in-chief, who wants this country.
Yeah, I definitely don't. I don't. And here's the other reason. I don't think the average American, I don't think, if you look at that country right now, you look at his approval ratings, I mean, he's sunk about as low as you can go.
Sure, but he's talking about a third term, which violates the Constitution.
But again, this is what Crazy Town does. This is what Crazy does, which is why when I keep coming back with these announcements, I'm like, why?
It's going to be the greatest show, and a lot of people are coming. And I got to tell you, I just signed a $10 billion deal. A $10 billion deal for the show. So I realize what it sounds like. I get it.
Right.
Like, I totally
Some are
get
saying
it.
you're crazy.
Yeah.
Some are saying I'm crazy for letting you make these announcements, but I think you deserve the right to make a big announcement on Toronto Mike, because I think you have you intend for it all to unfold, and sometimes you get blocked by mainstream media because you seem reliant on having a mainstream media channel in order to be Raw Mike Richards. I think Raw Mike Richards would be fucking rad and better and more lucrative for you if you cut MSM out of it.
No, here's the problem.
And then we'll get back to Trump.
Here's the problem. If you just want to have a sports podcast,
yes,
I had a meeting just after the TSN stuff with Scott Moore.
Yep, FOTM Scott Moore.
So Scott said, he goes, you can't have a sports podcast that would make anything unless you have a machine behind it.
He's wrong.
And what he did was he cut all the shows are available in podcast. Well, who cares? So you got 3 hours of sports nerddom. Nobody cares. No one cared the first time. No one's going to care the second time. So what he did was cut them all, and then did Frege and 31.
Well, yeah, a number of teams, so it grew from 31 to 32. But
yeah. So you have a situation where. And Stern said this a long time. I mean, you better be famous. I mean, you better have.
But Stern's wrong too.
No, I just don't think I'm going to get. Now, here's what I will get.
Yeah.
Numbers. So I'm going to be on a major platform where I can convert numbers to the other side. Mm-hmm. I don't believe I can do it the other way around. If I do, it'll take me forever. I ain't getting CIBC. I'm not getting Subaru. I'm not getting Alberta Premium or any of these Dominion Securities or Home Builders. I'm not going to get that. To a degree, I get some money, but not the. Okay, I'm going to make money at this. Good money, not okay money, not pocket change.
You're going to make an adult salary from this.
I'm going to be a big boy, and I want it to be like a really big boy salary.
Okay,
but I can only do it if at some point those that are spending the dollars actually see the numbers that they trust. So people would say, well, how can you trust like numerous numbers now? How can you, when you're saying such a... But it will be a combination of more than one thing, Mike. It won't be just what I get in Calgary on air in radio.
Right.
It's going to be all those other things. But again, you got to start somewhere.
I don't want to sound like a negative Nelly, because I think your hustle is impressive. It inspires me that you never give up and you're always going for it again. And this is happening on April 13. I don't know if anyone heard April 16. That's some bullshit right there. April 13. This is happening on the Fan 960. Okay, and it's happening for you, buddy. And I'm freaking jazzed for you. But I'm just looking, guys. So I'm just going to point out a real life case scenario, which is there's two guys. You talked about you need a team. Scott Moore says you need this team behind you to make money in podcasting. Who do you think is the Humble and Fred team? Because they make real money. They're making the money that you want to make. Who do you think is the Humble and Fred team? And they have no mainstream media links. They do this completely independently. Who's the team behind Humble and Fred? You're looking at them.
Yeah, but here's the other thing too about Humble and Fred.
Yeah.
First time I ever heard about podcasting was them. To a
Got in
degree-
early, you're saying.
Yeah, to a degree. But here's the other thing too. Substantial audience from the radio. I don't have that kind of audience. I don't believe I have the kind of audience that Humble and Fred do.
Big gap between, but their radio lives ended in 2005 when Fred got fired. So 2005, and they didn't start this regular money-making venture like this until 2011. So there is a 6-year gap.
There is, except when you're a fan of somebody, you're a fan of a band, you're a fan of whatever, you tend to not dislike them because you can't. In fact, some would argue you tend to yearn more for what you really crave. And so maybe a layoff, but I think they have substantial audience. If I started a sports podcast, what am I possibly going to do? And look, when I did Raw Mike Richards back on King Street back in the day, now I didn't really know what I was doing, but like I hated it. I didn't enjoy it only because I realized the reach that I wanted to have, I didn't. Now, I'm not saying I did it the right way. In fact, we all know I probably didn't. This is the right way.
This is the right way.
This is not the end all and be all being on Sundays on the Fan. But in order to, for instance, if I had to make a comparison, I would say this very much is how you work out the kinks onto what eventually you want to have. So I have 13 weeks to more or less perfect how I want the visual part to be. Now, remember, as you talked about the podcast, the audio part is going to be what you're going to hear in Calgary, was what you're going to hear on Sportsnet The Fan.
Right.
But the studio's there. Everything that I build about the television is there. I need to see how I'm going to implement when I talk to Dana White from UFC, when I talk to Doug Flutie, or if I talk whoever I'm going to talk to. I have to figure out what I want that to sound like, but more importantly, what I want it to look like. Doug Flutie, by the way, one of my favorite athletes of all time.
Doug Flutie, a big Donald Trump fan. I'm here to find out.
You belong on CNN.
Look, I'm fired up now because now I've got my, because you said you're a bomb shelter guy, and I realize, maybe I'm becoming that because I'm now having serious thoughts about how do I keep my family safe? Because I'll be honest, I don't give a fuck about me. Like maybe this is why I've been riding my bike alongside 18-wheelers where a little pebble on the road and I'm under the wheels. Like no fear at all. I don't care about me at all. If I know my kids are safe, my wife is safe, my family's safe, I'm just literally ready. I'm like, I need to be fit and ready because we're going to need insurrectionists. We're going to need the insurgency at the ready. The resistance is real. Am I now becoming one of those wacko bomb shelter guys? No, because the commander-in-chief of the world's largest army wants us, is threatening us, and won't drop it. So I think he'd be foolish to think, he's never going to invade Canada. Let's watch what happens in Greenland. Watch it closely, Mike.
But it's Greenland.
On that,
Greenland. Tell me who cares about Greenland.
Denmark cares about Greenland.
And who cares about Denmark?
I love Denmark. Okay, so let me ask you this, though, Mike.
Say one word in Danish.
I love a good Danish, too, by the way. All right, so Charlie Angus was here earlier in the year.
Yeah.
And I asked him about, this is very early. I think this is, I don't know, was this early February? I got to check the date on this. It's going to be discussed on FOTM Cast tomorrow with Cam Gordon and Tyler Campbell, the VP of Sales. So we're going to cover all this tomorrow. But as a teaser, I thought I'm going to play you 40 seconds of Charlie Angus and I talking in this basement about number 99. And then I want to know Mike Richards' thoughts on this. Okay, so let's listen.
Well, I think back in the day, I probably watched every one of Wayne Gretzky's games. I hated the Boston Bruins, but boy, I cried when Bobby Orr couldn't play anymore, But when Donald Trump announced that he wanted to run Wayne Gretzky as this puppet candidate, I thought, that's what Putin does.
Yep.
Putin creates these puppet candidates that he's running. This isn't what you do in a democracy, and Wayne Gretzky should be ashamed of himself. Absolutely ashamed of himself. Don't bother coming back to Canada if you're even willing to consider being a puppet candidate. You should do the decent thing and say, in no way would I ever undermine my country. Wayne, you failed us.
Raw Mike Richards, please. What are your thoughts on the backlash in this country against the player formerly known as the Great One, number 17, Wendell Clark? I've given him the moniker, the Great One. What do you have to say about Wayne Gretzky?
It is almost inconceivable to me that he could be that unaware of his decisions and its impact on this country. I think that the Four Nations, which started out as I didn't care. I didn't even know what it was, to be honest. A friend of mine, Steve Rendell, I call him the Beaver Man. The Beaver Man calls me, said, hey, why don't you come up and watch the first Four Nations game? Four Nations? What is that? Girls hockey? I'm not watching girls hockey. I don't care. Yeah, that's right. I don't care for it. I don't watch it. I don't pretend to know it. If for those who like it, great. But I just thought it was some made-up tournament. And then he explained what it was. I go, oh, okay. So sort of a faux Olympic. I'm getting excited because our guys are going to beat up on Finland or something. I said, I don't care. But then the political hammer comes down. And the first, now, again, I played hockey at a pretty high level. And then just because I made a really bad decision, just didn't watch hockey for a long time. Like I just vanished. And I was still young when I did that. However, as a kid, it was just a little painful. So I kind of didn't have the juices for hockey that I used to. Well, the puck drops in that first game and they all start fighting. Well, you should have seen me. I am Irish. And the blood does go to the head sometimes. Mm-hmm. And I started flipping out. My son's never seen me like that. Yeah. He goes, I can't believe you're like, I wanted to fight somebody. I really did.
I was there too, bud. Yep.
And by the time it comes to that final game, I have a knot in my stomach like I haven't had since, well, I think the Vancouver Olympic win. That to me is probably the last time. And then before that, it might have been Paul Henderson. It might have been Paul Henderson in 1972.
Right.
I just didn't have that feeling and haven't. I'll sit in front of a hockey game and go, oh, God, have they added periods? How long is this thing going to go on for? Is that really Austin Matthews? Is that his hairline? It's not a good hairline. This is me watching the hockey game. That's a bad mustache. I don't understand why people are, and then you got to pay $9 million to go and watch these games, and all the games are like, okay, and then what's going to happen in the playoffs? I think we really got a chance this year. No, you don't. No, you don't. So I have had this breakup with hockey for a while. Now people, since that time, obviously you talk about hockey, you talk to all the players, you talk to these guys. Yeah, I do, because it's my job. Because it's my living. I understand the game. I understand the players. I understand what the coaches do. I understand why the GMs pick those players, and generally understand what ownership does. This is what being 30 years and talking to all of them on a regular basis does. But this is so big that how could the guy who literally created the aura of what hockey is south of the border in years when I lived and went to school in the States, and they said, so you play ice hockey? That's where it lived. That's where it lived. They didn't even understand what I was talking about. I had a jacket on that said All Ontario Champions. So what is that exactly? There was no understanding of hockey whatsoever until Wayne Gretzky makes it so. Then down with Bruce McNall and Los Angeles and just his appearances. He shows up on The Young and the Restless. He's on Saturday Night Live. Right. All of a sudden, the ice part starts to disappear a little bit, and now they're talking about hockey. Now, there are places, obviously border states that have always been that way. But here's a guy who understands his place, not only in the history of the game itself, NHL related, but in Canada. He knows what he is. He knows what his nickname is. It comes with a weight in which our entire lives he is held with a sense of dignity like nobody else. I mean, if he was able to be knighted, I'm sure we would have knighted him.
Right, although we never picked up his Order of Canada medal.
Well, look, when he walked onto the ice, there was nothing that said that he was Canada's team captain or whatever the title was supposed to be. And at that moment, I'm watching it and I'm like, oh, this is going to be bad. This is going to be bad. Now, I didn't realize how bad it was going to be. But because of what happens with the Trump era and its incredible... Now, I won't say paranoia, because that means I'm calling you paranoid. I am saying with the fear that he has put into this nation, which I, as a 62-year-old, I've never felt that. I've never felt like there was any sense of intimidation. I've never felt that there should be an uneasiness about our lives in this country. And yet here it comes a guy who is literally one of the most famous Canadians who has ever lived, as far back as you want to go. I mean, do people talk about Sir John A. Macdonald? Well, usually in a bad light now. But we're talking about really, in history, one of the most famous Canadians in a time where Canada has never been threatened. Right. And his response was that. Now, I am always someone that says, in freedom of speech, whatever you choose to like, vote for, worship, you have the ability in a free world to make those decisions. I can't dislike someone because they liked Justin Trudeau. Now, do I think Justin Trudeau did a good job? Again, this is a more political conversation, but I interviewed the guy and thought, there's no way this guy can be a leader. There's just no way. But for those that do like him, I don't dislike you for liking that person. But this is different. This is like someone saying, I talked to this guy, Adolf. He's got some pretty good ideas. Because it's that bad. And I'll tell you who also, at that time, and I know people go, oh, you're not bringing up the Hitler thing. That's a little cringy, isn't it? Well, if you talk to Eric Braeden, so the man who plays Victor Newman, whose real name is Hans Gutgast, he is German. He had to flee his country during World War II because, as he would tell you in very clear language, people think I swear a lot. He said that insane murderer who ruined almost for all time the nature of what German people are really about, who committed heinous crimes against humanity. And yet here we are and at the time when he was talking about it, it was like 2020 probably, that with all we know about history and how it can repeat itself, that they're going to put in a man who's doing the exact same things that forced my family to run from the country in the first place in like 1942 or whenever it was that they left. Sure. And so when I look at that and I look at Wayne Gretzky, and even if he himself doesn't realize it, he has, I don't know how many handlers you'd have, then I would think if I'm his manager, if I'm his confidant, if I'm his friend, and he says, oh, geez, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to drop the puck, because he's talked about how the jersey wasn't necessarily there for him or whatever, and I'd say, hey, Wayner, yeah, put the fucking jersey on. You better go out there, and you better understand where you stand with that country against what they're afraid of in the most contentious time that this country has ever seen, and you're seriously not going to have even a fucking Maple Leaf pin on? Well, this is what we got now. And this is why, like that clip that you just played me, it's very hard for me to see people that I know inherently are good people that have done very good things do something that is, I don't think it's reversible. I don't think he comes back from this one. There are people historically in our lives that I think have achieved greatness, but make these horrific decisions and they don't come back for them. I think this is that time.
I think we as a country need to accept the probable truth, which is that Wayne Gretzky is A-OK with what his friend Donald Trump is doing to his former home country. Like, I think we have to accept this silence, which is, because when did that comment, in the end, this is a while ago, that clip I played, but when Trump made the comment about, his friend Gretzky would make a great governor of the 51st state or whatever, that was months ago, and we have had complete silence from Wayne Gretzky. He hasn't made a public comment, a public statement, not even a throwaway support that I love Canada. Canada's a sovereign nation and always will be. Like, give us something like that. He said nothing.
To go back to that quote, what he has become is what Alex Ovechkin is to Putin.
Right.
So Ovechkin,
except Ovechkin is a proud Russian. Gretzky does not appear to be a proud Canadian.
Right. That's a fair point. It is a fair point. I know it's not. I know that he loves this country as much as anybody else. However, in those decisions that you make in those moments, it is beyond my sense of incoherent thinking in that moment where the numbers on that hockey game, like I don't know what they were, and I mean mostly south of the border.
They were big
But I would gather that
for a
they're
hockey game.
some of the biggest numbers that they have ever seen.
Sure.
And he, in that moment, didn't understand the gravity of the situation.
In that moment now, we're talking, what was that, February 20th or something? Like, that was over a month ago now. He's had ample opportunity to say something. People have spoken on his behalf. I'm thinking Bobby Orr, his wife Janet. I'm thinking the President of the United States of America. The fact that this man hasn't said a word about it just leads me to believe that silence is deafening and that Wayne simply doesn't support Canada in the in this war with the United States.
Even if you were wrong, even if that statement you just made were wrong,
I hope I'm wrong.
then what evidence is there to prove the opposite? Because there isn't any.
Silence can speak volumes at a time like this. I look for the Mike Myers, for example. Mike Myers has been extremely vocal in his, elbows up support for this country on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
He's been filming promos with the Prime Minister. Gretzky said nothing. And I'm telling you, Canada's listening to all the Canadian celebs that have moved to the United States. There's many of them. The silence is deafening. I don't want to call out names, but I don't. If you be a Ryan Reynolds or if you be a Michael J. Fox, there's so many Canadian celebrities living in the United States that I haven't heard boo from. I do want to give a little love right now because I tuned into the Junos last night because I enjoy watching the Juno Awards. And they got it right, man. They go 2 hours and they're tapping out for the National at 10 p.m. It's my kind of award show. But I will say Michael Bublé hosted this thing and he gave an impassioned speech at the beginning, which is really the kind of speech I think all Canadians would love to hear from somebody like Wayne Gretzky right now. And we heard it from Michael Bublé. Mad respect for that guy. Mad respect for Mike Myers. I got mad respect for Mike Richards. These are funny times, dangerous times, and I'm glad, Mike Richards, you'll be back on the radio where you belong.
It's the start of something that I hope can gain momentum, and at some point, God willing, it will be more than just me. That's the goal. That is the goal, to get back to a point where we understand that we have great sports fans in this country. We have sports fans who also enjoy some entertainment, some opinion, because I fail to understand or agree that the only opinion, the only shows that we can watch that have that are all American.
You're a proud Canadian, Mike Richards. Elbows up, buddy. You part of the insurgency with me?
But there's some great ideas, some really great ones. And let me tell you, that Toronto Mike, he's a nasty guy. That's what we call him, Nasty Mike.
And that, you're raw Mike Richards. You could be nasty Mike Richards. See if that domain's available. Okay. And that brings us to the end of our 1,660th show. I look forward to your visit next quarter when you make another huge announcement, Mike.
And the announcement will be the numbers. The next time, here's the prediction.
Yeah.
The next time I come in here will be about ratings, and then we'll see.
I wish you nothing but the best, man. I wish you nothing but good luck, good success. Calgary is lucky to have you. My only thought is they should be paying you, not taking your money with that.
Well, at this moment,
that's coming.
We'll see.
That's coming. Go to TorontoMike.com for all your Toronto Mike needs. That's where I'll be sharing news on the insurgency that I plan to be a part of. I'm on Blue Sky actively, what are we calling those? Posting? Skeeting? I'm actively doing that on Blue Sky. I'm at TorontoMike.com. I noticed you joined Blue Sky.
Yeah, I did. I don't know what I'm doing there.
No, but you know what?
I have no idea what's going on.
I hate to quote Mike Wilner. Do you like Mike Wilner? You dislike him?
I know who he is, but I don't know him. No.
He told me if you like to go to a bar, let's say you like this bar that you would go and drink Great Lakes beer at, and then the bar was sold to a Nazi, a guy you believe to be a Nazi, would you continue to go to that bar to drink?
Well, let me answer with this. Eric Braden, once Elon Musk got in there, was gone. Eric Braden is available on Blue Sky only.
Glad to have you on Blue Sky. People should follow Raw Mike Richards on Blue Sky. Much love to all who made this possible. This announcement has been brought to you by Great Lakes Brewery. You got some fresh craft beer for you,
They do
Mike.
fabulous stuff. Trust me, it's great beer.
Palma Pasta. I have a large lasagna in my freezer for you, Mike Richards.
Beautiful.
RecycleMyElectronics.ca. Everybody knows that's where you go. If you have old cables, old electronics, you go to RecycleMyElectronics.ca. Building Toronto Skyline by Nick Iones. He's got a new podcast called Building Success. Can't wait to tell you more about that. And of course, Ridley Funeral Home. See you all tomorrow night for FOTM Cast with Cam Gordon and Tyler Campbell.